What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here with a Tottenham update going into the last 12 hours, I would say, of Tottenham news, and we're going to get into all things Ange Postecoglou, injuries, and a little update on Pedro Porro as well. But we're first going to start off with Ange Postecoglou, with a lot being said by many different kind of people surrounding his future. And all the journalists have come out and spoken about it today. Matt Law says that Spurs are not planning to hit the panic button and are focused on doing everything in the club's power to help Ange and his players turn around the situation. Sammy Mokbel says that Daniel Levy is prepared to give Ange Postecoglou every opportunity to turn around his fortunes at the club. Dan Kilpatrick says that Ange Postecoglou's future is not up in the air despite Tottenham suffering another defeat at the hands of Chelsea yesterday. The Spurs board consider it's business as usual this week as the team prepares for Thursday's visit to Rangers in the Europa League and Sunday's trip to Southampton, and remain committed to a long-term project under Ange Postecoglou. John Cross says that Ange Postecoglou retains the support of the Tottenham squad despite the team's disappointing start to the season. BBC claim that one Tottenham player whose identity is withheld to protect his position in the dressing room simply believes the squad lacks depth and further investment is needed to push towards the top of the table. The players have given their support to Postecoglou on the record, and that positive feeling is being reflected in an off-the-record conversation with BBC Sport. And Sky Sports say that Ange Postecoglou has met with Johan Lang to discuss a potential January transfer business that could help Tottenham improve Tottenham's fortunes. And also, Romero came out in support of Ange Postecoglou after the game yesterday as well, which is quite significant in my opinion. But yeah, doesn't seem like Spurs are pushing any sort of panic button just yet. You know, you never know what can happen after a couple of results, positive or negative. But, yeah, obviously you think this is a good thing.
I think it's the right decision, yeah. I think if the players still retain the support of the manager, I think that's the best course of action to stick with them. I think when you've looked at the kind of ending of a lot of other tenures, Mourinho, Conte, and tenures like that, there's always been a lot of reports about losses of the dressing room, falling out with players, dreary kind of atmosphere around the training ground, all this kind of stuff. At the moment, that's not the case here. At the moment, I was just reading an article in The Athletic as well. It was quite a good article about saying the results definitely are evidence that the Postecoglou project isn't working, but it would still be a big mistake to sack him. And that's kind of where I kind of land at the moment. I feel, yes, results are not good enough. We shouldn't be 11th after 15 games, given the players that we have. I think that's evident. I think no one would have accepted that at the beginning of the season, and I still believe that just because it's not where we are at the moment isn't good enough, doesn't mean we should chuck away the good stuff that Ange football can give us. And I think we should aim to get that football more consistently, rather than just chuck away basically the work that we've put in so far. It was always going to be rough, probably not as rough as this, to be honest, but it was always going to be a difficult rebuild and whatever since he took over. And he did get fifth last season. This season we wanted to push on from that, and we haven't done that. That's the reality. You could argue we've gone backwards, six wins and 7 defeats in our first 15 games, and that is not a position we should be in. But have I seen enough when things are good to suggest that if we can get that more consistently, we can go back in the right direction? And if we get through this rough period, we can start to turn results. I do think I have seen enough, in my opinion. Not to say that we are going to progress from last season in terms of finishing higher than 5th. I think 5th at this point, given how many games we've dropped, is probably our ceiling. But we're still in the cups. Given how good we can be in one-off games, does that not mean we can still do something in the cups? I do believe that. If the players still believe that they want this manager in charge, then I'm willing to stick with it, and that's kind of where I land. And I think it's the right decision to stick with him for the time being.
Yeah, look, I don't really know how to feel on it, because I feel like the job that he's doing at the moment is clearly not good enough for where we want to be. Like, the results over the last year have been nowhere near good enough. I feel like the performances are regressing at look, the Chelsea performance was okay in patches, but still not good enough in my opinion. And I feel like the worrying performances like the one that we saw last week at Bournemouth, that last half an hour, probably one of the worst half an hours I've seen as a Spurs fan. It was definitely up there anyway. You look at the Ipswich game, the Palace game, second half at Brighton, Galatasaray, you know, all these games in such a short space of time are very concerning to me, and I'm very worried about in the direction this season is going. Do I want Ange sacked? I'm not too sure. Do I have belief in Ange? At the moment, not too much, where I had a lot of belief in him at the beginning of the season and definitely throughout last season, even when the results weren't going our way. I always said that there's no point in keep hiring and firing and sacking managers. And I've always said that we need to stick with a project finally. And I thought Ange was the guy that we should be sticking with. But I'm just not seeing any sort of progression this season. And that's the massively concerning thing for me. Do I think that firing him right now is the right course of action? Probably not, because we just don't have anywhere to turn to after that. And I don't feel anyone can come in at this stage of the season, anyone that's available anyway. I mean, you can force someone out of a club like Manchester United did with Ruben Amorim, or maybe you can get a kind of short-term success in that kind of sense, maybe. But it's a far cry. Like, I'm trying to think who we can get, and I don't think you can get anyone out of the Premier League clubs that we'd probably want, like the Bournemouth manager, even if you wanted someone like a McKenna from Ipswich. Is he going to leave? Maybe. But I don't know. I just feel like...
When you say you've always wanted to see Tottenham stick with a project, isn't that what this looks like, sticking with it?
Yeah, and that's what I'm... Yes and no. Like, I would have thought that we'd be showing signs of progression, and I don't think we are showing signs of progression. So I don't want to stick with it just for sticking with its sake.
Yeah,
you know, I want to stick with it with me seeing light at the end of the tunnel, which I don't see at the moment.
But have you not seen enough that when things do go right, that we can be a very good football team? So isn't that enough for you? Maybe it's not enough for you, but isn't that enough to to suggest that if we can get back to those levels, then maybe we can go on a bit of a run?
But I don't think we've ever shown consistent levels. I mean, if we did once upon a time did show these consistent levels that we can reach those heights consistently, then maybe I would be more willing to stick with it.
That's always the hardest thing to do.
Correct, but you look at it as well, and you look at the tactics that he deploys, and you look at it, I think other teams know how he's going to set up, and I think other teams have clearly identified ways how they can get at us at a consistent basis, and I feel like he's never going to change those ways. And once we come up against specific systems and specific teams, we're always going to come under pressure, and we're always going to concede chances and goals and ultimately not win games. So do I think the way that Ange Postecoglou plays, can he get us to the top? Can he not even get us to the top, but consistently even finishing fourth? I don't think he can. And I think when you're looking at the evidence, when you're looking at the players that we have, the players he has at his disposal, it's much better than what he's showing ever since the end of the first 10 games of last season. And he should be doing a lot better. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be. Yeah,
I don't disagree with that, but I'm just saying, if we're going to stick with this project, we've invested in youth and all this kind of stuff, then we might as well just see it through. Right. I know we all want progression, and of course, if we finish 11th, then he should be gone by the end of the season. I don't believe we'll finish in that position. I believe we will finish higher, but I think I've seen enough when things are good for me to believe that things can turn, and that when things are good, we can win football games again. And if we have embarked on this project, and we're better off instead of chucking away 15 games in. I've seen enough in the football when the football is going well for me just to stick with it for the time being, instead of just throwing it in the bin, essentially. And that's what I think. I guess the hierarchy are feeling as well, that they've started this project and they've given him a 4-year contract, and they might as well just go with it instead of just ripping it up now at this point.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's how you feel. And I'm just a bit unsure. I mean, if they were to sack him, let's say after a loss against Southampton or after exiting out the Carabao Cup, will I be disappointed? Would I be upset? in terms of Spurs looking for a new manager. I probably would be in the case of that. Yeah, we have to start again. We have to start looking for a new manager, a new thing, a new cycle starts. Yeah, it'll be very frustrating. But would I be unhappy to see the back of, what we've been doing over the past year? Probably not. I probably wouldn't be. And I want someone that can come in, that can provide a bit of, level-headedness and a bit of consistency and a bit of variation in our play as well. And you look at the opposition that you're going to face and you actually come up with a bit of a plan, not just do the same thing every single game. And I feel it makes us a bit too predictable. And
Yeah.
I'm just not sure if we're ever going to get to where we want to be under this manager.
We won't know unless we give it more time, I think.
That's also true.
And that's what I just think we should
But then
do.
if we do give it time, we don't get there, then it's the biggest waste
Then
of
we
time.
rip up then. But there's no point ripping up now.
But I don't see what... I mean, look, like I said, I don't know if it is the right decision to rip it up now because I don't know what it looks like on the other side. We don't know if Spurs are going to make the right managerial decision. We don't know who's going to take over. If I knew a few managers in the running or a few managers who they might be thinking of, that it'd make it a bit of an easier decision. But right now, it's too much of an unknown. Am I happy with the job that he's doing? No, I'm not. I'm nowhere near happy with the job that he's doing, and he should be doing a lot better. And there were clear red flags at the back end of last season. There's been clear red flags this season: injury crisis or no injury crisis. So I'm fast losing belief in this project, very fast. And I was one that was backing it 100%. I loved Ange when he first came in. I still like him when I hear him in the press conferences, but it's not related on the pitch. That's the reality. So I can like the guy as much as I want. If he's not providing for my football club, then he's not the right man for the job. So we'll see what happens. Results will be the factor that defines him. And right now, the results are not going in his direction. And it's not like we're performing well in these losses and deserve more out of these games. Yes, that was true in the first couple of weeks of the season, but that's not true anymore. So if performances were there and I could see something to go on, then I'll be behind it. But they're not. That's the reality.
They're not now, but they can turn.
They could.
And that's what we're hoping for. We've seen.
But they were, and they turned. They did turn.
And maybe they'll turn again. Football's not always just if you're always going in one way and then you're always going one way. At the moment, we're in bad form. We're in a bad moment. And when you have to turn that around, and I would rather give him the time than say it's turned bad, so we have to go now. I'd rather give him the time to turn it around. And I've seen enough when things are good that I'd like to see more of that, if you know what I mean. In other managers, when things are good, even then we're not even that we're winning games, but the football hasn't been that enjoyable. No one's even that bothered when things are going well, apart from maybe that first 6 months, when we had Conte. Apart from that, in that second season under Conte, even when we're winning games, we weren't playing well, we were scraping through. It wasn't good. This time, from what I've seen this season, when we win, we're winning well, we're playing well, and I do want to see more of that football. So I would rather give Ange the opportunity to try and turn results around and try and get that level back, rather than say results have turned, performances have turned, so you've run out of time. I'd rather give him more time.
It's just a question of how much time is the right amount of time to give him. Another question is, we know how the hierarchy act, right? They might be saying this right now, but if the stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in the away end, proper turn, I know there were a few chants last weekend against Bournemouth, but it wasn't that significant. If it really turns and they start chanting Levy out in the masses, we know what he's going to do. We know what he's going to do. He's not going to back him anymore after that, is he? He's going to use him as a shield, and then new manager will come in and new hopes will come in, and that will quickly get forgotten. So he might be saying he's backing him now, but we know full well if the stadium turns against him, what's going to happen.
I don't disagree with that, but that's why I'm happy that, not happy, but I think it's the right thing to do to not react to this poor form by sacking him and just allow him the time to turn it around. Because I think in previous 10 years, at this point, we probably would have sacked him, and we're deciding not to.
Probably well before this point.
Yeah, so I think, and I think that's the right thing. If we've gone through this project, let's just carry on with it instead of ripping up and then trying to cobble something together mid-season to try and save it. When even that might not work. So you might as well just persist with this, I would say. When we know we like what we see when things are going good, so let's just try and get things to go good again, essentially.
Yeah. Look, I'll be up for that if it was to turn in a positive direction, but I've just got no hope that it will at this moment in time. Maybe a few results can change that, and I'm willing to change my mind. But look, I just want Spurs to be a good team, really, and I want what's best for Tottenham Hotspur. So I would love nothing more for Ange Postecoglou to prove me wrong in terms of the direction this project is going in. From what I can see and what I've seen over the past year, there's just not a lot to go on to tell me that, you know, we are going in the right direction. And look, the wins have been good. I'm not going to deny that. But to have more losses than wins in the prior year to now is just nowhere near good enough. And no other manager would have been able to survive this at Tottenham Hotspur. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully he can turn it around, and hopefully he can regain the majority of the fan support. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because all the polls that we do and all the polls other people do, it just does seem really split in terms of what the fans want in terms of Ange in or Ange out. I feel like it's like close to 50-50 at this stage.
Well, the polls we do are more 60-40.
Yeah.
So at the moment, it seems majority are Ange in. Obviously, you're going to be at the moment. If you're an Ange supporter, it's hard. There's not a lot to be loud about. So you're not going to be on Twitter after losing a game saying, "Oh, Ange needs to stay." It's going to be something to ponder. When you're Ange out, there's obviously you've got a lot to say when you lose a game, and those voices are going to be amplified. Doesn't mean they're the majority, though. I still think the majority don't want him sacked at the moment, in my opinion, from what I've seen. But obviously, support is losing after every loss, and when you're 11th, that's always going to happen. He shouldn't, be. Obviously, 100% of fans aren't going to want a manager in when you're a team like us and you're sitting 11th. I don't deny that, and that's not how it should be. There's always going to be big question marks when you're Tottenham Hotspur and you're sitting in the bottom half of the table, 15 games in. And that's probably how it should be. There should be big question marks. I think it'd be wrong for everyone to say everything's going swimmingly when you're 11th, of course. But does it mean it's the right thing to end the project now? I don't think it is. And I think a lot of Tottenham fans agree.
Yeah, and disagree, to be fair. But I think, like, when you're thinking about the project and when you're thinking about Ange, I do feel like a lot of people probably feel like, I can't speak for people, but the way I feel, and maybe some other people feel potentially that I've spoken to, is just like they probably don't feel like Ange is the right man for the job, and probably don't feel like he's doing a good job at this moment in time, but just can't see another manager sacked and another cycle start. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big thing that's going on right now, where, yeah, look, he's not doing a good job, but who else can come in and do something right now?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is also, as you say, big frustration.
It's not out of belief, it's just out of frustration about how Spurs have been since Pochettino, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of the frustration director Ange has also misdirected anger at the club. Not to say that the anger directed at Ange with the results that he's had isn't justified, but I think a lot of it as well is just that feeling of where the club has been, especially since Pochettino, but obviously over the last 20 years, with no very little trophy success, and on the cusp of maybe another project potentially falling down and another project failing. And at the end of the day, if that happens, we know that there's only one direction the finger will be pointed. And so a lot of fans are probably waiting for it to go wrong because they believe the ultimate problem is above, and they're ready to point the finger there again. And that is where a lot of this feeling has come from. And I completely get that as well. But I don't think it's all totally directed in Ange's direction. But they obviously right now he's the one getting the results, and the results are not good enough. And when that happens, obviously he's the one in charge of getting those results. So he's going to be obviously heavily criticised. But I think a lot of that anger as well under the surface is for the board. I mean, not even under the surface, but a lot of the anger, a lot of the criticism I see of Ange, I think is a lot of misdirected anger from the board level as well, because of the frustration of where we are.
Is that where you're at? Do you think it's the board? It's on the board?
I mean, I've got no love for the board. I understand the direction they've gone in since Ange has come in. I think we've made, in terms of recruitment, we have made a lot of good signings. We spent money over the last 18 months. Obviously, I thought last summer we didn't do enough. We invested a lot in teenagers. We did sign Solanke for 65 million. But what we ended the summer with was a squad when everyone's fit, I think is a decent squad. I think that could potentially challenge for top four if everyone's fit. We have gone through an injury crisis, but the problem with the injury crisis that we've had is that it's magnified the holes in the squad that were already there. And we've been punished for those holes that we've left in the squad, 100%. We've been absolutely punished for it. And that definitely, the recruitment and the board have to take responsibility for that, for sure. But we also shouldn't be 11th with the squad we have, and we're much better than that. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around. I think the manager has blame. I do think the recruitment and board have blame as well. So I think the problem with the criticising the board is they've had a lot of blame over the last 20 years. So, you can't really forgive them for any mistakes they make in the current project, because they've made the same mistakes in previous projects as well. So I completely get the criticism for the board. I don't think the board are to blame for why we're 11th, but they're definitely to blame for why there's massive holes in the squad that are being exposed.
So would you put them as the number one culprits of what's going wrong at Tottenham?
In the big picture, yes, because that's the reality of this club ever since, especially since Poch has left in those last 5 years. Of course, they're to blame, because they've been directionless, and they haven't had any sort of idea of where we're headed, and they've gone from manager to manager, and they've, as I said before, they've tried to give this pretense that we're a big club getting big managers, but haven't backed it up with the big budgets that big teams are giving their teams, now the managers. Now under Ange, I think they've gone in a different direction, and that direction is going to take a lot more time than the direction Mourinho's and Conte's supposedly will give you. And at the moment, we're going through that process. I don't mind going in that direction, but we need further investment in terms of filling those gaps in the squad, and we're being exposed for it at the moment.
But you look at it as well, the direction we're going in is, young players, teenagers, right?
Which takes time.
That are going to have a big future. That's going to take time, of course. But when you look at the history of Ange Postecoglou, he only usually sticks around at a club for 2 to 3 years. That's what he does, right?
But they've given him a 4-year deal.
They have given him a 4-year deal, but didn't we give Mourinho a 3 or 4 year deal as well?
We gave him a 3-year deal, I believe.
And Conte was just a short-term deal, but there was always thought that maybe he could extend that if things were going well, which obviously they didn't. So they're giving a manager a 4-year deal who usually only sticks around for 2-3 years, and giving him teenagers to fill the squad. That's probably the beneficiary of the teenagers will probably be the next manager. It won't probably be Ange.
Maybe, but at least that, we're thinking about the future of the club in terms of the future of the players, because we needed to do that. We had an aging squad. We didn't have many good young up-and-coming players coming through, and we needed to have younger players. Now, does that mean we can just neglect all the holes in the squad like we have done, and also signing players like Timo Werner, which I have a problem with? No, I've still got problems with that, 100%. But in terms of thinking of it as a long-term project, right, rather than doing what we've done before, that's the only way we're going to get we have a chance. If we're not going to spend the big money, the only way to do it is do it in a long-term project kind of way. That's the only way to do it, to catch up, because we're not going to do it by spending big money. So let's try and do it that way. If that's the way you're going to do it, then commit to it, and don't half-arse it. That's what I'm saying.
But I just feel like the project has holes in it in general, because Ange Postecoglou is not a manager that usually does long-term projects. He's not a manager that, takes kids and nurtures them for 3, 4, 5 years and makes them into world-class stars, right? He's a manager that usually comes in, fixes some problems in the short term and wins something. That's what he does.
He might still do that.
But we're buying him teenagers that are probably going to be, if they do work out, because not all teenagers, if they're on one trajectory, end up being on the trajectory they're on when they're in their 20s and go on to be class players. They might well be, but they might not be. You never know what can happen in a teenager's career. So we're giving him these players, and we're asking, and he thinks that. And the way he talks in the press, he said like this time last year, well, if I'm not in a title race next season, I'll be bitterly disappointed. Like, how are the club supposed to match his ambitions? Because we're not matching his ambitions.
No, we're not. And I don't know.
So the project doesn't add up on board level to what the manager's saying, what the manager wants.
Ange is a very ambitious guy. He's always going to aim for the top. He's always going to aim for everything. He wanted to win his league in the first season. You know what I mean? He's just that kind of person. But the project's always been to rebuild the playing style, rebuild the squad. It was always about ripping everything up and starting from scratch, essentially. And that's what we've done. I think it's a bit of a myth to say he's only been given teenagers when we have signed, Solanke, Maddison, Van der Ven's young, but we signed him as well. Like, we've signed other players who are not teenagers. It's not just been teenagers, but last summer, predominantly with Gray, Odebear and Bergvall, it was a lot younger players. So, what's your question? How do we match his ambition? I think we just got to keep building on the squad, building on what we have and fixing those holes.
But he didn't want just teenagers to come in the summer. He didn't get what he wanted. He wanted players that were ready-made for the Premier League. He wanted a Conor Gallagher, a Pedro Neto, some other players who I can't remember off the top of my head, players that are, in their mid-20s, not even 20 yet. So the club aren't fulfilling on what he wants. And it's clear to see.
Yeah, potentially.
It's true. It's a fact.
Potentially. I don't know. I'm not in the recruitment. He keeps backing up, saying he agreed with the club strategy. So I don't know. But
I don't think he disagreed with bringing those players in, but I think he wanted more on top of that.
But if we want to bring a midfielder, one of Basuma, Bentancur, Sarr, Maddison, whatever has to go, probably. Timo Werner brought in. He needs to leave. I never agree with that signing anyway. We need more depth. I agree. We have holes in the squad. We need fixing, but I want to give him the time, give him the players to plug those holes, and see where we are when we have more depth. Rather than at the moment we're in the midst of an injury crisis on poor form. I think it looks very bad at the moment. But how can the club match his ambitions? We just got to keep adding to this squad. Just keep adding to it and plug those holes and keep improving on it. And we didn't do enough of that in the summer, and that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, do you believe that we will do it? Because I just don't. I just don't have any faith in this.
We've never done it, so
and I'm losing faith in terms of the manager.
We've never done it. We've never done it for 20 years. We've always had holes in the squad. So I don't know. But as I say, I think the best course of action would be to persist with this project because you've started it. So you might as well persist with it instead of ripping up and going for another one yet again.
Yeah, I guess. It's just a question of how long do we actually give it? Like how much of a downward spiral can we keep going in until we just say enough's enough?
As I've said, in previous years, the board would have already sacked him. So already that shows to me that they're willing to stick with it. So I hope they do.
Yeah, I get that. But I'm saying, like, how long does the club give it? Like, how many more of these bad results do they accept before they actually say, all right, enough's enough? Like, it can't go on for too much longer, surely.
I think he'll probably get the January window, and then we'll see. I don't know.
But then you think about, like, what's the point of giving him the January window if they're already thinking like that?
Well, they're not already thinking like that, so.
Well, that's what they say. But when these kind of things come out, it's usually like the vote of confidence that says a manager's really under pressure.
Yeah, but you don't really get players saying it. As I've said, the difference is the players are still behind him. Beforehand, it seemed as though the players had lost faith in the likes of Conte and Mourinho, and it was very poor training ground atmosphere, and apparently it's not the case right now. So
You say that, but every player that we hear about from the Jose tenure all say that they loved playing under Jose, and it was all a false narrative about everything that we heard. That's what I've seen.
depends who you ask, I guess. Maybe it's the same here, but I'm just saying. I've heard. Well, the reports I've read is the training grounds were a depressing place under Conte and Mourinho in the end of their tenures, and right now it's not that. So maybe it's not the end of Ange's tenure.
Maybe it's because Ange ain't on the training ground.
Maybe, I don't know.
Look, we'll have to wait and see what happens, but it looks as though the club and the players are fully behind Ange Postecoglou in this moment in time. Let's talk about injuries. Dan Kilpatrick says that Romero is set to undergo scans today to understand if he's to be sidelined again through injury that saw him subbed off early against Chelsea. Tottenham are hopeful that Mickey van de Ven and Brennan Johnson will be fine despite both failing to see out the 90 minutes. They're saying van de Ven was cramp, Brennan Johnson was illness.
Positive.
The physio scout on X says that van de Ven came off with muscle tightness and is expected to be sidelined for less than a week. The Tottenham defender's latest hamstring injury versus Chelsea was more due to load management than anything major.
Yeah, I think. Sounds like they're not too bad. Sounds like they should be all right for the next few game or next game potentially anyway, which we're going to need them.
Yeah, I don't think Van de Ven plays Rangers.
Depends. If Romero's out and Davis is out, we might need him to.
Could be Dragoshin and Gray or something.
I think it's a big game.
You can't keep doing this to Mickey van de Ven.
I think
you just can't.
I think he plays like 70 minutes again. I wouldn't be surprised because
I don't
it's a
think he
big
will.
game. I think it's a big game, and
It is a big game.
Depends
but
how he feels.
We've
Depends
got
how
2
he feels.
games a week.
I know. It depends.
Every game's a big game.
It depends how he feels, but I think there's a good chance he'll play again. But it's positive that it's not bad. It's positive that it feels like they're not injured and they shouldn't be out. So that was a big worry for me after the game. That if we've lost Van de Ven for another extended period, and also Brennan, that's numbers dwindling even more in an already stretched squad, and that would be an even bigger blow. So thankfully, it sounds that they're not too bad.
And last but not least, let's talk about Pedro Porro, because he shared a post on social media on the social platform X yesterday. I think it was a Squawker post about his goal contributions. Like, I don't know, no defender has got more than 20 plus goal contributions or something like that in the past, well, since he's joined the club, I think. And he posted that after the game yesterday, and that was met with a really negative reaction to some Spurs fans. And on the back of that, he's deactivated his social media account.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't know what he's doing after a defeat to Chelsea. I understand, I don't think he personally had the worst game or anything like that, but bigging up your goal contribution results after we've just had a poor defeat and the team's in poor form, we're sitting 11th, it's just not a good look. It's a bit of a PR disaster. It's just, why are you doing that? You just bring heat on yourself. So don't get why you would do that. It's just stupid. I understand the criticism. I don't think it's like something you should send him abuse over, but if you do get criticised or people are sending you negative comments after that, I'm not surprised, because people are frustrated because we just lost the London derby. So I think the time and place, Pedro.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't condone any sort of abuse that he did get, but I mean, I'm not really surprised after a loss to Chelsea, one of your biggest rivals at home, in the manner that we did. And he was part of it, as much as, he probably had a better display yesterday than he has in previous weeks. Not saying much, because his displays over previous weeks have been terrible, to be honest. So, yeah, you gotta have a bit more wits about you, particularly on social media.
This is some big quotes here from Cuti Romero I think we should cover.
Go on.
He's been talking on the Universal Premio podcast.
Is that the Argentinian one?
Sounds like it. And he was asked on whether Tottenham are falling behind their rivals due to their lack of investment. He says, the truth is, I would say no comment, but he does comment. He says, but Man City competes every year. You see how Liverpool strengthens its squad. Chelsea strengthens their squad. If one doesn't do well, they strengthen again. And now they're seeing results. Those are the things to imitate. The last few years, it's always the same people responsible at Tottenham. Hopefully, the Tottenham hierarchy realised who the true responsible ones are, and we move forward, because it's a beautiful club that, with the structure it has, could easily be competing for titles every year.
Well, Mr. Cuti Romero.
Calling out the board, essentially. Big. I think if anyone was annoyed at Romero, I think those quotes would get them back on side.
My guy, Cuti Romero, come
What
on.
do you think of that? He's calling out. That's a very strong quote. The board won't be happy with that,
Sending
surely.
shots. I mean, it's very reminiscent of Danny Rose.
Or Danny Rose as well.
Danny Rose, Conte, Romero. But more people need to be speaking up like this.
This is one of the vice
club.
captains of the club saying
100%, and he's absolutely spot on. He's spot on. He's in there. He all he wants is success. Romero. He's part of such a successful international team, right? And then he comes to Tottenham and he sees the drips and drabs that comes in every year, where we're nowhere near competing with anyone at the top. You look at this club, right? It gives the illusion of being such an amazing club with the stadium and the training ground and everything like that. And then it's just not related on the pitch. It's not related at all on the pitch. And you bring in teenagers, you bring in players for significant amount of money, but we're only bringing in these players for that kind of money because we don't want to go all out on the wages. You know, you could easily spend 50, 60 million on top players if you're giving them big wages. But we're spending 50, 60 million on the likes of like Brennan Johnson and these kind of players because they are in the lower wage bracket. So I think he's absolutely spot on. He's absolutely spot on, and I'm glad someone in the club has said something.
But I think as well, that clearly shows where his head's at as well.
Yeah.
In terms of...
And does anyone blame him?
No, definitely not. But it's very revealing from Cuti Romero, I think, those quotes. And look, we know he's an ambitious guy. We know he's a very good footballer because of what he's won international. You don't win 3 international tournaments in a row being the main defender of that team if you're not a very, very good defender. And this is a guy who's a winner, 100%. And I'm sure when he, looking at Tottenham being in 11th and all these different, and when he sees people like teams like Chelsea investing $1 billion and things like that, and they're they're second in the league and we're floundering, that's obviously how he's going to feel. I completely understand that 100%, and he voicing what a lot of fans feel, to be honest. And it's interesting to hear him say that, and interesting to hear him say that in a podcast, because not many players are so vocal about it, and it shows that he does want the best for the club. It shows that how ambitious he is and where he wants the club to be. And hopefully, look, I don't want to say hopefully it's a wake-up call, because I'm sure the board know about it or whatever. But it's good. Look, it's going to be interesting to see. Call. It's going to be, yeah, I know, but how many wake-up calls do they need? You know what I mean? There's probably been 100 wake-up calls.
They need to keep giving the wake-up calls until someone wakes up. If your alarm doesn't wake you up, it'll keep going and keep going and keep going until you wake up.
And how many times can Spurs hit the snooze button? That's the
exactly. So more people inside the club need to speak out like this, and I'm so happy that Romero has. He's called out the club. He's a vice captain at this club, and I just wish more people would do it, because there are many fans and people that still back this chairman and think, and the hierarchy, and think that they've got the best interests of the footballing side of the club at heart, and they don't. They clearly don't. They want to just prod along and think that to overachieve and get a top 4 space, and that's all this club want to be. Like I said, we give this illusion of being one of the biggest clubs in England, but it's just not related in the transfer business and what we see on the pitch on a weekly basis. And Cuti Romero, a born winner, a winner for Argentina, vice captain of this football club. Yeah, he hasn't been at his best this season, but his mentality is right up there, and it's shown here by these quotes.
The last few years, it's always the same people responsible at Tottenham. Wow, damning quotes there from Cuti.
And it's not the last years. It's not the last few years since he's been here. It's been a lot longer than that. But look, let's hope these quotes send something into the club, but I highly doubt it. You look at when Danny Rose said these comments, nothing happened on the back of that.
They'll just sell him.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
Hey, well, look, he's in a precarious spot at the moment in terms of his contract situation. I think in the summer he's got 2 years to go.
Mm-hmm.
So either they sell him this summer for big money if a big offer comes in, or they're going to risk losing him for a lot less, because he ain't signing a new contract under these.
Clearly he's not happy with with the
And he
board.
shouldn't be happy. No player at this club should be happy with the way we're going. No fan should be happy in the way that we're going. So, you know, Romero has done well to speak out, and let's hope some more people can do it too, because
But
more...
it's also interesting because he backed the manager yesterday, and now he's calling out the board. So that shows maybe, I'm sure he's not alone in the squad with how he feels.
Yeah, probably right. And like I keep saying, you know, that is the number one issue at this football club. You know, we can keep prodding along and finishing fifth and, you know, having a good season, bad season, good season, bad season, good season, bad season. But ultimately, nothing will ever change unless these owners change their approach to this football club. And that's the reality. We can change managers every single season if we want, but nothing's going to change unless these owners change their approach. And that is that. That is your Tottenham update for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.